Oh.
Oh, good evening and welcome to Western Reiki Association Presents Reiki Topics and Techniques. We're on episode 4 of 4. We have our panel of Reiki wisdom holders, Barbara Rose of Wellness Network, um,
Rose
and
Wellness.
Rose Wellness Network. I'm sorry. You know what? Let's do this week. I want you ladies to go around and introduce yourselves. I know our audience knows who all of you are, and we've got all your information up in the post. But why don't you all go around and introduce yourselves this time?
Okay, well, I'll start since you mentioned me. My name is Barbara Rose, and I'm a Reiki master teacher. I created my own version. My version of Reiki is called Radiant Heart Reiki. So, and my business is Rose Wellness Network. And it's good to be here.
Thank you.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi.
I guess I'll go next. I'm Kathleen Johnson, UniverSoul Heart Reiki. I'm a Holy Fire 2 Reiki Master Teacher. I'm also a crystal healer and past life regression therapist, and I'm excited to be here again.
Beautiful. Thank you.
My name is Karen Cagg, and I am the owner of Arkansas Reiki Institute. I'm a Reiki Master Teacher, and also I have an aromatherapy business as well.
Thank you.
Hi, Karen. I'm Andrea Kennedy. I got started with Reiki about 23 years ago, and I'm in Michigan now, and my little company is called Mainstream Reiki. So I'm just thrilled to be here with all of these Reiki lovelies, and Stephen, you're lovely too. So I'm excited to get started.
Great.
Hi, Andrea.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, ladies. And I'm Stephen. I'm host and moderator. So I'll be keeping an eye on the comments. So make sure you post your comments and any questions that you have for the ladies. Now, ladies, last week we kind of talked about starting with protection and grounding. Are we going to start there, or do you have another topic to start with?
Sure. Well, I'll chime in since I wasn't here last week, but I commented a lot. I love grounding. It's one of the things that was really important for me for Reiki, because I felt like I was flying around all the time before Reiki and even after Reiki. Mm-hmm. I realized I wasn't grounded. And some people think that if you're grounded, you're really stuck to the earth. And it's quite the opposite. The more grounded I became, the more connection to the divine and, my intuition came on board, and it just opened up a whole new world. So I make sure I'm grounded. And one of the comments I made was, I think about myself as being a tree, one with a great canopy. And everyone that knows about trees, if you have a great big canopy, that means you have a great big network of roots. And so I see myself as being the connection between the canopy and the roots. The canopy is connecting to the divine, the roots are connecting to the earth, because we're on this planet. If we're on a different planet, then we would connect to something else. But on this planet, this is where we have to connect. So the energy moves from the divine through me to the earth, and then back up again through me to the divine, and just cycles over and over. And I love the image of the tree. So that's what I do with students. I also talk about going outside with barefooted. I have one student that's looking for moccasins. She's determined to find something that she can put her insoles in and walk around, because she says she needs to be grounded. There's a lot of people I run into that really need grounding. So we go through that. And there's crystals. Some people mention crystals. I use hematite. Sometimes I used to carry it in my pocket because I felt like I was always a little bit wispy and ready to go. And so I used to have hematite in my pocket. I don't need that now. Now I just feel so firm into the ground, into the divine. So I am really set. So
that's beautiful. Didn't someone else use the tree?
I do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Kathleen. Yeah. Great.
I think it's a great analogy.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Now, for the protection part, we didn't really get into that too much last week, aside from mentioning it, I think. How about using Reiki for protection when you are seeing clients or out in the public, something like that?
Can I just say something about grounding before we move away from it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I really like what Barbara said about the tree, and also about how the tree with the canopy has the deepest roots. And it's interesting that you said that, Barbara, because that is something I go over with my Reiki 1 students as well. And that's exactly the analogy I use, the tree. And I also use mountains. The biggest mountains, the tallest mountains have the broadest base, so they can reach up that high. And like you, I have run into those who feel that if they're grounded, they are not going to be able to grow spiritually. They feel, oh, they're going to be just stuck to the earth. And so that's a misconception, obviously, and I do my best to clear that up by using the analogies of the tree and the mountain. And I always say that it's all about balance, of course. It's all about balance. And if we're grounded, I always say you need to be grounded to Mother Earth, connected to Spirit, and centered in your heart. And then you're balanced. And that is how we grow spiritually. Because when we are firmly in our bodies and firmly connected to Mother Earth, it allows us to then really work with what we have and expand outward, like the canopy of the tree that you described. Yeah. And once people start to understand that, they are very often really amazed at the difference in how their spirituality and their growth just really takes off. And they don't have that, as you said, wispy feeling. And I know that feeling all too well. That wispy, like, woo, off in the stratosphere somewhere. I don't like that feeling. It's not fun. Right. So I just think the whole grounding issue is so important, and there's so many people out there who feel that is a detriment to their spiritual growth. And what you said about the grounding, and as far as a lot of people are walking around ungrounded, very true. Most people have trouble with their root chakra, and of course that's the one that grounds us to the mother. And again, grounding is super important, and it's something that every Reiki practitioner needs to be able to do, especially when you're channeling Reiki. When I have students who say that they feel tired after a session, my first question is, did you ground yourself? And it's like, oh, yeah, I didn't do that. Try it. You'll feel better.
Exactly.
Well, when my first Reiki teacher all those years ago, I don't think she ever mentioned grounding to me. No. And so I didn't know about it. And I got to the point where if I was going to go to Reiki shares, because, early on I was just really helping my family and doing distant sessions and things. But I would go to Reiki shares when I could find them. But I always knew I would leave with a headache. And I didn't know why that was. And then finally, somebody said, well, you have to ground yourself. And I went, what? And so then I learned about grounding in a whole new way. And it is so important. So I always tell my students, I'm like, if you ever get a headache or, you don't feel well, you have to ground yourself. And the other thing I wanted to say on that is, I also tell people that about grounding, if you were mentioning people that think, oh, to be spiritual, they don't want to be connected. But the thing is, we live here on this plane, this physical plane, and we can have the best inspirations. We can be so inspired. But if you want to manifest into the physical plane here, you have to be grounded, or else the inspiration has nowhere to be, the inspiration can't be manifested in the real world if you're not connected to the physical world. And so if you want success, if you want to do projects and see them through to completion, and know what that is like, and take your ideas and, see them through, you have to be grounded. That's a requirement.
Yes.
Exactly.
I wanted to say that I just taught a class this weekend, and one of my students was a yoga teacher, and we were doing gasho, and we were talking about grounding, and she said, and I gave the analogy of the tree as well, and she said, that's yoga. I mean, she said that's tree pose or mountain pose. When you said mountain, Kathleen, and I said, yes, exactly. And as Andrea said, you can't channel Reiki, you can't do anything when I'm not grounded. I'm more like the balloon that you blow up and you let go of, and it's just there's when you said wispy, I thought, I'm more gassy, I guess, than wispy. I'm just everywhere, and I can't bring anything into the earth plane. I can't channel anything, divine energy or manifest my goals, what I came here to do, I think, spiritually. So yeah, but and I think that the bringing two hands together, that's just simple gasho and focusing your attention there. That's a very simple grounding thing to do as well, just focusing.
It is so simple to ground yourself too. It doesn't have to be a complicated ritual. Just sometimes if I'm having a busy day, just by feeling my feet on the floor, keeping my feet firmly on the floor and feeling how they are connected to that floor. And I just feel that energy is going down to Mother Earth and she's holding on to me. That does it. And that takes seconds. And it makes all the difference in my energy, especially if I'm doing a lot of Reiki that day. Like Andrea said, I used to get the headaches too. And then, I forgot to ground, or I didn't ground properly. I was just in a rush and wasn't mindful with it, It's important to be mindful when you ground, but it's really simple, and it's quick, it's easy, and it makes a world of difference. I know we talked about this last week, but Stephen, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask the ladies again what their favorite way to ground is for those who may not have heard it last week. So how about you, Karen? What do you usually do for grounding?
The fastest thing, if I can, because there's even a grassy area outside my office, I will take my shoes off and go outside. That is, for me, and it doesn't look too weird. Just take your shoes off and just go out in the grass. It's the fastest for me. Just like, it must be electrical. It must be the electromagnetic frequency of the earth, because it's almost instantaneous for me. Like, right, okay, here I am here. That's probably my very favorite.
Hey, Barbara, you weren't here last week, so what is your favorite way to ground?
Thank you for asking. My favorite, I actually use a brain gym technique, which is putting your hands down at your side and then bringing up the energy up the central channel and out. And I have people do that 3 times because it really connects you with the electromagnetic field, which starts at the feet, goes up to the head, and then down the back. And it's funny because it does more than one thing. It grounds, but it actually, people will feel the energy. And in Reiki 1 especially, people don't always feel, you talk about energy and might feel like this, that. But they actually, if you do it 3 times, and I just go up to the mouth, out to the side, because you don't want to be going up and down. Otherwise, you'll connect with the energy, disconnect. So you just go up to the side. And then I have them do the opposite, which is to breathe down, which disconnects you. So then they learn how they feel when they're disconnected and how they feel when they're connected. So then I have them bring it back up. So it's called energy fountain or zip up, because you're zipping up into the electromagnetic field. And I love that exercise. I teach it to children. I teach it to adults. If you're feeling like, oh gosh, I just don't know, you're stuck, you can't move forward, I teach them that. And it's like, oh wow, now I feel like I have something, I can move forward, I can move back, I can move whatever direction I need to move. It's empowering. So that's what I use quite often.
So Barbara,
yes.
I'm not quite sure I follow what the instruction is there.
Okay.
So
we're all sitting down. If you have your hands in your lap, and as you take in a deep breath, you're going to move your hands up. Pretend that there's some water there, and you're going to bring it up to your hands, like if we were bathing in water up to our waist, and we're going to bring it up to our mouth and just going out to the side. So if you're standing, you can bring up the energy right from the earth. But even if you're sitting, you will do that. And I usually feel so elated almost because yeah. So, and with children, I'll tell them, because they may not like water. So I'll say, what's your favorite smell? And they'll say, oh, chocolate chip cookies. And I'd say, okay, bring up that smell. Everything is down below your feet. And it's like they bring it up. And they feel so good. So now just try the opposite so that you can really feel the difference. So now you're going to exhale as you go down. You feel that? Okay, so then bring it up. So this exercise is really good too for people who if someone, points at you or says something that you don't like, what's going to happen is your energy is going to fall. So if they learn this, they can just bring it up. So when I first learned this, I was working in the dialysis unit. And so I had I was teaching the aides, the renal technicians. And I said, so if you're feeling like you just can't go on or you're tired, just go like this 3 times. So everybody was running around fanning themselves. Because it was easy, no one would say, if you started doing this, they might say, what are you doing? But so I would just have them do one hand and just kind of do 3 quick ones. And they would say, wow, because dialysis, it was really, you had to be on your toes all the time. You could have somebody crash. And so we had to keep ready to go, but then that can be fatiguing. So I taught them this. And so we taught it to the patients too. And so I've been using it for like over 30 years, and I just love it. So it's a different technique, but it's really pretty well known. Donna Eden does some medical energy, I forgot what it's called, energy medicine, and it's part of that work too. Anyway.
Well, thank you so much. That made all the difference. So,
okay. Well, thank you for asking for clarification.
Mm-hmm. Andrea, what do you like to do?
Well, now I'm going to like to do that.
Okay, so before that.
Okay. I would do the visualization where I see the roots come out of my tailbone and my feet and go down. So again, tapping into the whole tree type idea. And then sometimes I'll jazz it up and I'll just do like ribbons of energy out of me, instead of roots. But I like that quite a bit. And then I mentioned the moving meditation last week, that we learn. William Rand developed it. And, I was thinking, maybe we'll make a video of that or something another day. But that is just such a neat thing. You use the arms and you say a positive affirmation and then exhale as you go down next to your legs, and you just envision your energy just tunneling all the way down into the earth. I mean, all the way to the core. And it's very empowering. And my students, I do this in class. I've even taught some clients this that I felt really needed it. And you can feel the difference in your feet, and I love that because it's like, okay, feel your feet, feel what that's like. And then we do this motion, the positive affirmation, burrowing the energy down, and then they pick their feet up again, and it's like, oh, they feel different. So I love that because it's just, they actually feel the difference, like you were saying, Barbara. And so with your technique, and that you just can't, there's no substitute for that because they're feeling it and it makes sense to them at that point. They're actually experiencing it.
Moving meditation is great. I used to do that every morning before I started my day. I got away from it, sadly, but hearing you talk about it reminds me of really how effective it was. Mm-hmm. It takes a few minutes in the morning, and wow, did it make a difference going forward? So,
yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And there's always the old standby chocolate for grounding, right, ladies and Stephen? We talked about that a little bit last week too, Barbara.
Yeah, I like
Was on
chocolate.
board. Yeah.
Yeah, dark chocolate.
Oh,
Yeah.
dark. That's right. That's what we all said.
Yes.
So anyway.
So should we move on to protection then?
That sounds great.
Okay, so I have I don't know. I want to share a little bit about this, and then I want to hear what you all have to say for sure. But so protection is interesting to me because, I used to do all that shielding up and all of that stuff. And then years passed, and then, I've sensed and seen in people's energy fields before. They'll be on the Reiki table, and I can see almost like this barrier above them, their energy. And I think to myself, I bet it's their big habit that they put up their protection and all that. They're very they have a strong intention to keep protection up, and I'll ask them after, and sure enough, they do. And so so my thing on protection is, number one, because we can see it in the energy field when people do this religiously, and that's their habit, I would point that out and say, isn't it amazing how creative our thoughts are and our intentions? Because when you can see it in the energy field as a result of the thinking and the practice that they've done, that's pretty amazing. And so I think it's proof that our thoughts matter. Our thoughts are creative, and so are our intentions. But so what one thing I tell people is, I think it matters what's behind the intention, because if you're coming from a place of fear and then trying to put up your protection, I think that's very different than, I'll use this analogy. It's raining outside, it's raining hard. We're not afraid to go out in the rain. We just don't want to get wet. So we take an umbrella. You see the difference? So it isn't like, oh my gosh, that rain's going to get me, I need my umbrella, So the whole energy around it is different. So I would invite people to observe and become aware of how they're feeling about why they need protection. Are they coming from a place of fear, or is it more of a just put on an umbrella kind of thing without that kind of charged energy to it? So I would investigate what your emotions are. I think that's pretty important. And the other thing I'd say on that is, I encourage my students to worry more about their own energy, because if you're a 1,000,000-watt light bulb, walking around, that's going to do a lot for you, and that's a powerful thing. So my view is that the lighter we are, the less affected by that kind of thing we are. We're just not resonating at that vibration, I think, as much when we work on our own light. I think it's kind of a natural built-in thing that we're protected like that. But and the last thing I'll say is, when a person puts up lots of protection all the time, it kind of creates or can create a sense of us versus them, me versus them. That separation and duality. And I guess we need to ask ourselves if that's how we want to be, and how we want to live our lives. So I think it's complicated, actually. I do think it's the issue of protection is a little bit complicated, but I think I think it requires some thought and some awareness and not just willy-nilly doing things. But that's my 2 cents. So what do you all think?
I like the idea. I like that idea of the umbrella. I think that's lovely. It really is. And I think you're right. It's all about how you approach it. It's about the intention. The shield. I always say you don't want to put up a shield because that keeps everything out. That's a wall. So yeah, maybe nothing unhealthy is going to come in, but nothing healthy is either. So what I tell students and clients who struggle with this is to think of it as a filter. The filter is keeping out that which is unhealthy for you or what is incompatible for you. But it's allowing in the healthy and the compatible energies, and you're able to give out what you want and what you want to, disperse. So the idea of the filter versus the shield seems to resonate with people because they don't feel like they're walking around with this wall, which is really unhealthy, I think. You don't grow when you're walled in, right?
Right.
So, but I love the analogy of the umbrella too. That's lovely. And I think what you said is so true. It's how you approach it. What are your thoughts? Thoughts become things. They're extremely powerful. So if we're approaching it from a place of fear, we're going to have that wall. I got to keep them all out. They're going to get me, And no, if we approach it from a place of, it's raining. I don't really want to get wet. So, I'll take that umbrella just in case. Right? So thanks for that. I like the umbrella story.
Oh, well, you're welcome.
Yeah, that's a great metaphor. I love that because I do see people sometimes they're like, oh, I've got to have this crystal and I've got to do this. And I agree with you, Kathleen, that just the words, because words are important, that filter instead of shield. I imagine, are you guys pretty empathic? It seems like many Reiki practitioners are. But you don't have to be afraid. And I like the way Andrea put it, that if you are a 1,000,000-watt light bulb, that you're gonna, and because I was around for many years a lot of negative energy, and even before I was even aware of it, just to survive, I was just like, I'm gonna just shine at you. I'm gonna shine brighter at you, or if negative words or feelings were coming at me, I would, like you said, a filter. Like, okay, if it's good, it can come in, but if it's not, it's going to kind of go whoop, and then back is love, sort of like back to you is love, and to try to really just be aware of it, be aware and set that intention, like you said, Andrea. That's important. I sometimes at Reiki shares too, I'll meet people who are almost afraid of, like, oh, there's some negative energy here. I'm going to pull that off and I'm going to put it in a bowl of water and I'm going to take it outside and dump it in the ground. Or, it's like, I don't know. Really almost like a fear of it. Like, you don't have to be afraid of it. But I do try to, because we get tired sometimes, or we get down. I mean, I do anyway. Maybe y'all don't. But I have to, and I do use my oils. I do use, because some of those oils help me raise my vibration. They're living energy, just like we are, and crystals are. So that kind of helps me shift automatically. So, yeah. What do you do, Barbara?
I like what you're all saying. It's wonderful. And since I was trained, 1988, there was a lot of talk about fear. I mean, about energy and protection. And I remember one of the first people I trained, and they were calling in, the wild buffalo woman and Jesus and this, and it was a litany of people to protect them. And I started thinking about it. It's like, wow, I never thought about having so much protection Although a psychic one time told me, I said, I really don't do too much with protection. She says, well, that's because you have this like titanium shield around you and it looks like you're in a saucer and only your head is sticking up. And I thought, oh, really? So, talking about thoughts become, things. I had thought I didn't need any protection, but I already created something around me. So then I had to work on, why do I have that? And I came to the idea that I just had to raise my vibration. Just like Andrea said, the light bulb. If you hold a higher vibration, then nothing that's less than that can stick to you. I say it just goes over my head and then, just gets transformed. Yeah, it just gets transformed. And so if it's not like me, it will not stick. If it's higher than me, then it could stick and add to me. And so I worked on taking down that titanium saucer that I was in. But, I grew up as being an empath. And it's one of the things that I work with people. I seem to attract a lot of empaths. And I always felt like, even if I didn't know what the situation is, I could read people, I could tell. I was very emotional too. And so at some point that all shifted, because if you keep your vibration up and you're not fearful, then, you don't create that back. You don't just feed into it. So that's what I do. I just keep my vibration up. And there's a really good book I read. I met the author too, Stephen Hawking, that wrote a book called Power versus Force. And it talks about vibration levels. And, fear is really low. We should be, up in around 540 is on a scale from 0 to 1,000. And, the Dalai Lama and all the avatars are way up there. But 540 is the love. And when a cat purrs or a dog wags its tail, it's vibrating at 540. So, we should at least be vibrating at 540. And grandbabies do that too. I had my granddaughter today. It's like she's giggling and wiggling and carrying on. It's like, oh boy, the vibration is just so high. So we have to bring ours up. And things like shame and doubt and fear are all really low. So when you encounter them, you just have to think about, I always have my happy thoughts. What are my happy thoughts? Well, the grandbaby, I think about her and all of a sudden, my vibration goes up. So sometimes not only visualizing that you're, 1,000 watt bulb. It's just, finding what's really makes you happy and elated, and then connect with that energy too. And it's automatically, you'll be, burning brightly. So. Right. Really, and I think empaths are ones that really work on that, protect our need to know more about the protection aspect. Because I have people all the time saying, I just can't function unless I put some barriers up. And I do like the idea of filters rather than barriers too. Because you think about our whole body, all the cells decide what it wants to bring in and what it doesn't. Our bodies are working like that all the time. So our external world can work the same way. What do we want to bring in? What don't we want to bring in? So we just keep our vibration and it's kind of a discrimination in some ways, but it's discerning. It's like, I like this. This feels good. I'm going to add this to the mix. Or it's like, well, that's not what I want at the moment. So it's just a discerning and being really light about letting it go. If it's not in harmony with you, just let it go.
Right. I know I was told when I first started Reiki, our teacher told us we had to protect ourselves when we were doing a Reiki session. Mm-hmm. But as I've, become very comfortable with Reiki over the years, and I've been guided, and I kind of have forged a pretty good relationship with Reiki, I've come to know that it's not really necessary, because if you are, like you said, the Buffalo Wild Woman and Jesus and whoever else is being called in, why are you doing that? Because you're afraid. And then you have the energy of fear enter into the Reiki session coming from the practitioner. I don't want to introduce that energy into my sessions. I have never, and I can say this honestly, I don't think I've ever been worried about picking up anything unhealthy in a Reiki session. I've had clients say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. My energy must be, I hope it doesn't affect you." And I'm like, no. To me, it's a one-way street. It's, it's not like it's bouncing on, it's not like bed bugs, it's not bouncing onto me. So I just don't worry about that. Or a tick or, some kind of parasite. But it's, I don't think about it. It to me, it's a non-issue. And I think that's why it's been a non-issue for me, because I never introduced the energy of that fear into a session. I take precautions. I clear my space. I clear myself, but I don't worry about that. And I don't even like to use the terms positive and negative. I say healthy, unhealthy, compatible, incompatible. Energy is energy. It's neither positive nor negative. It is how it works with us and how we perceive it that makes it either or. Exactly. So I'm pretty selective about how I even refer to it. What you say about the bowl of water being carried outside, I've actually witnessed that, something similar to that. And honestly, it scared me. I'm like, what's in that bowl? Get it out of here. So anyway, those are my thoughts on protection for what it's worth.
Well, I have to say, Kathleen, I'm really relieved to hear you say that, because that's like me in a session, like the protection thing and all of that. I feel just like you. It's like I have just come to know it's unnecessary. And just like you, people say that too about, oh, my energy, or they're worried. And it's like, don't even go there. I don't think about that at all. So don't worry about it at all. So thanks for saying that, because, as we do these shows, I just think it's awesome because, as Reiki practitioners, we're alone in a room with our client and we see them and they leave, and then we'll see someone else. But to have an open dialogue with other Reiki masters like this is just been so educational. So I hope people are learning at home, but oh my goodness, I just think this is great. So I'm thrilled to be part of this with you all. So
likewise.
Likewise.
I feel a little bad for kind of making fun of people who put negative or put stuff in the water. But
no.
If anybody's listening to this, I mean, if that helps, but I just
it frightened me. I didn't know what they were doing. It just seemed scary. That's how I interpreted it.
And it just seemed completely counter to Reiki.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Reiki is love. And, so I don't want to tamper with that by being afraid of what's going to happen to me in a Reiki session. It just never entered my mind. I know my teacher mentioned it, but I just sort of went, it's, no. Sort of knew that wasn't something I needed to concern myself about. And I think that's what we do, though. We take what works and we say no thank you to what doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's
what we have to do. Learning, as Barbara said.
Yeah. It seems like more and more people coming to me with anxiety, though, and asking about, is there any, I don't know if it's just the modern world that we live in and just so much information coming at us all the time, or do you have that? Does it seem like there are more people who are saying, what can I do? And they'll ask me, how can I protect myself from this? What do you guys tell them? I mean,
have Reiki.
Yeah.
More Reiki.
Yeah, more Reiki. Come back next week. Yeah, really. Well, yeah. But I've noticed that there are more people with asking for, like, what can I do to protect myself? I just feel overwhelmed. I feel like I can't function through the day, and so I'll tell them just to try to hold on to that. Like you're getting this kind of boosting the light this Reiki is boosting your own light, and you've got that. Now I sound like, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Well, I don't know, that might help. But seriously, I guess as far as like a protection, just like try to ground and find that your own light in there, and that acts as a good filter. So
yeah, I have really seen an increase with clients coming for anxiety, for sure. A lot of them say that. So Reiki sessions are good, but learning Reiki might be very good for them if that appeals to them. But the other thing I tell them sometimes is, if they're saying that they're so overwhelmed with life and everything, I might ask them, do you have any sort of meditation practice that you do? And I will recommend, that they look into that if they don't, because if that can be so helpful for so many people. And, all of they have medical studies and MRI scans, and the proof is there that it's so helpful. And I think it's worth looking into. The other thing I might tell them or invite them to do really is to take a look at their lives and, see if they can simplify things, or if that feels right to them. But I mean, if things are that bad, obviously something needs to change.
I've noticed an increase in people dealing with anxiety too. It seems like just about everyone, even clients that I've had for a while, will start presenting with, oh, I've been so anxious lately and having trouble sleeping, the stomach issues, all that. One of the first things I ask them is what you said, Andrea. Do you have any sort of regular practice, like a meditative practice, or do you spend any time in nature, things like that? Depending on the answer, I'll go with that. And there's a lot of people who say they can't meditate. It just, their mind is racing, all that. So I usually recommend guided meditations to start, because then you're listening to someone else, and it's easy to keep your monkey mind at bay when you're listening to someone else's voice. Also, what I've found in treating clients with anxiety is that almost all of them are completely ungrounded. And being grounded really, really helps anxiety. When you're fully grounded to Mother Earth, it pulls you into your body, and you just feel better. You feel more whole, I guess, complete, instead of all over the place, like Karen with the balloon, gassy, and Barbara feeling wispy. Usually I feel like scattered, frazzled. Those are the words I use. But I think being grounded, we go back to that again, how important that is. That helps with anxiety. And for those who have like very busy lifestyles, which most of us do, I will say take 5 minutes out of the day and just allow yourself to be. No, don't do anything. Just go somewhere quiet. Surely you can find some place for 5 or 10 minutes and allow yourself to just be. You don't have to try to meditate. You don't have to do anything. The idea is just to allow yourself to be. And most people say that really helps them. It kind of pulls them right back into center. And it's like, wow, okay. So those are the things I suggest. But yes, I have seen a huge increase in anxiety. So, Barbara, how about you?
I have the empaths, but I want to talk a little bit about, add on to what Andrea said about the energy field when you're working with people. I've had a couple clients that I say they're in shrink wrap. You can't, there's nothing there. It's like they're so wound up. And so I'm working at, pulling this and pulling that out, stretching it out. And I had one client, too, that was completely separated. Her whole body was above her body. Her whole And so there is this disconnection. And so depending upon what it is, then I'll teach them. Almost everybody I teach this energy fountain to, because it can ground them. I try to find out what they can, if they can list a couple things they're really grateful for, because gratitude will increase their energy as well. And then really the happy thoughts, it may sound really simple, but, it's like, what are your happy thoughts, and sometimes it's I tell people, my daughter and I used to have a word. This is going to sound really strange, but remember, I'm a nurse. Diarrhea. My daughter one time was sick, and the teacher asked her, "What's wrong with you?" And she said, "I had a terrible case of diarrhea." And the teacher and I both stopped from laughing, because it was serious to her. She was really sick. And so to lighten her up and to lighten me up, that's the word we use between ourselves. So we would say diarrhea. And so, you just can't laugh. So it's like, now I still do that with her. If she's getting like, oh, I got to do this, and I'll say diarrhea, and then we'll just giddy. So, or a funny joke, if you can tell a joke, if you're a joke kind of a person. But you have to find something that really can lighten things up. To me, almost anything will lighten me up. I look outside, even if it's a rainy day, and I'll feel really good about things. But, not everybody's there. If they're in shrink wrap or they're separated, they don't know if they're going to stay or leave. Like this woman said, I don't know if I want to stay in this body because it was so painful. So then you have to try to, find something that they can connect with. But, that's one of my favorites. I tell people that, and then they lighten up. And if they can find a story, especially about them, that, something funny they did that they can remember and in the moment, and then that usually changes the whole energy.
That's true. I just made a video about that a couple of weeks ago, about just that I don't play, or just to be silly sometimes, because that you can feel like just your solar plexus is a little bit of a little bit of a light just from laughing and being silly. Don't do that anymore.
Right.
Yeah, do stuff like with the sword, and pretended to be a princess for a second, and that made me feel so much better, because I was just laughing at how stupid I was. But I might use the diarrhea now. I really like
And you have to really say it like it's coming up.
Diarrhea. Yeah. Oh, and they've done studies on if you will just make your face muscles into a smile.
Exactly.
Okay, first of all, I look so stupid it makes me laugh, but when I'm really just, it fools your brain into thinking you're happy. So
that's right.
That's it.
Yep.
Okay. So, and that's good for protection. That's the best thing to do. A little humor.
Oh, and one more thing, if you indulge me. This is kind of related to the filter again. And when I talk to people about, what they like and what they don't like, they'll say, oh, it's this, and this I don't like. And then but what do you like? And they'll say something else. And it's like, yes, try to find more things that you like. And they'll say, well, okay, that's easy for you to say, but then when you feel bombarded, what do you do in the moment? And I said, well, so this is an analogy I use, our breath. When we exhale, that breath can give life to another person. But when we think we're letting go of it, we think it's not really good, right? Like our body has taken all of it, all that it needs, and lets it go. But I tell people, your exhale can help another person who can't get air. So it's this idea of what we think is bad or isn't good is just if you can think about it, it's not in the moment. You do not want that. So then think about what you do want. So you have to replace what you don't want with what you do want. And so this idea of breath, it can when we're in a room together, we're not all in a room together, but just think if we're all in a room together, what I exhale, you be taking in, what you've exhaled, I've taken in, and we think, oh boy, all this mixture, and exhale we usually think is bad, and what intake is good, but it's all from the same area, the same environment. And so it's just an idea that it's just what we don't want at the moment. Our body doesn't want the exhaled breath, but we may take that same breath back in a moment. And our body will say, well, I want this, this, and this, and let the rest go. So everything that we come to, everything we encounter in a day, we can use that same metaphor. It's like, yes, I think I'll bring this in. Yeah, it's like, this is not right. I don't want that at the moment, but it doesn't have to be labeled as bad. It's just not what's desired. It's not in our best interest. It's not exciting. Then we can just let it go.
Thank you for saying that. I think that, that pretty much, that expands upon what I was saying about positive and negative. And
yes,
your example of the breath is great. I like that because we let it out, but probably we're going to get that back eventually. And it will be something we want and need. So
right.
That's a great example.
So if we tune up our body so that it just will take in what we desire and then let go of the rest. So we just have to tune it up, keep our vibration up, and then that's what seems to, happen. But it takes a while. It's a practice. And I tell clients too, if they have a lot of anxiety or they're very empathic, I suggest taking Reiki too, because it's like, well, you can spend all this money on sessions, but you can take a class and then, you can be supported on your journey of, getting better and better too.
Yeah, true.
Well, we have a comment from our live audience.
Oh, great.
Cindy said, I like the idea of turning a negative into a positive. I'd like to hear more on that topic.
Wonderful.
Is that what I said? Where
no, this is a comment on the post. Cindy's in the live audience, and she asked about to hear more about turning a negative into a positive.
Well, I'm going to say something on this real quick if I can. So there was an old, one of these little stories, you hear, and I love it. I absolutely love this little story. And so it was basically, I won't do it justice, but basically it was over in, I don't know, Germany or somewhere. And there was a farmer, and he was telling his neighbor, he said, oh, the worst thing happened, just the worst thing. He said, my horse ran away, and now I can't plow the field, so I don't know what we're going to do. And the neighbor said, oh, that's terrible. And he says, no, it's wonderful, because the horse came back and he brought a friend. So now I have 2 horses. And the neighbor says, that's wonderful. He says, no, it's terrible. I don't have enough to feed them both. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then he says something about the second horse that came back. It's not tame. And that's just terrible. What's he going to do? And the neighbor says, oh, that is terrible. He says, no, it's wonderful, because my son, he's very good with horses. And so my son has worked with the horse, and he's now able to help me plow. He's tame. And he says, that's wonderful. And he says, no, it's terrible. So son broke his leg. It's terrible. No, it's wonderful, because they called up all the young men to go fight in the war, and his son didn't have to go, So, you see the point, right? So I have a thing about labels, and I invite people, stop labeling everything as good or bad, because it's all about your perspective. What is great today could be terrible tomorrow, and what is, something that is terrible today could be the best blessing in disguise. You know, they don't have that saying for nothing, blessing in disguise. So I think, you know, for me, I try not to label things and judge everything as good or bad. And I instead think about it like, well, this is just the next thing I've chosen to experience, you know, and it might feel one way or another or something, but I know for sure everything is in motion. So nothing sticks, nothing stays forever. And I always, always believe there's something good that I can find no matter what, even if it's I'm still breathing. So I don't know, that's kind of my thoughts on that. So changing a negative to a positive, you know, how about not even labeling it as a negative in the first place, you know, and using that terminology in your mind, because again, then it's this versus that. You know, again, you've got that duality thing happening instead of, you know, okay, so this is the next thing I'm experiencing right now. What do I think I want to do about that? You know. Anyway, what do you think?
Perspective. It's you nailed it, Andrea. It's perspective. You know, when we shift our perspective is when we are able to kind of move away from duality and negative and positive. So everything is purposeful, as you were saying, that there's reasons that this is happening, blessings in disguise. And I'm speaking from experience when I say, and I'm sure most people would agree, that there's a lot of things that happen and you think, how could this possibly have anything good about it? You know, but then in retrospect, when you put some distance and time into it, you look and you go, you know, that really was the best thing that could have happened at that time, even though it didn't seem like it. And I'm very much with you as far as the labels, you know, good, bad, positive, negative. I really try to avoid that. That's why I don't label energy. I have clients come to me and go, oh, I'm broken. I have a client who used to tell me she was broken. I know. And I would say, you're not broken. You're just being remodeled, you know, and you're being renovated. And she goes, yeah, I like that better. I said, doesn't that make you feel better to think that you're being renovated or remodeled rather than broken? It's about the energy and your perspective. And so maybe that's how you turn the negative into the positive, just with perspective. Anyone else have any thoughts on that?
I agree, guys. It's hard to get there, though. I mean, but the words, but just making the conscious decision. You guys are right. The conscious decision on the label, to try not to label it, to just, because and just about anything that happens to me now, I can say, I'm sure this happened for a reason. I just can't see it yet. I got a flat tire. Well, maybe this delay is keeping me from being in a terrible wreck down the road, you know, or something. You know, that there's some reason for this, and I just have to go with it. It's like,
right. It's a process, but it's like anything else. But if you practice it, eventually it becomes second nature, and you start to look at everything the way you just described, and you shift your perspective. And once that happens, so much opens up for you, you know. Life seems sweeter. It really does. May not get any easier, but it seems sweeter.
Well, and I think you reach a point. I mean, I've met some people and they think that like life is a battle and like life is against them and that kind of thing, and always seem to be struggling. And then you have to ask yourself, well, what came first? You know, it's the chicken and the egg thing. But I'm sure, I believe with everything I am, that the language we use and our perspective, the words we choose have energy to them. So like in your example, Kathleen, when the woman said she's broken, oh my gosh. And that's like the thing that gets me too, is people will say, oh, he's such a pain in the neck, or It's like, really? How long's your neck been hurting, you know? Or it kills me when he does that. It's like, please do not say those words, you know? We have 2 kids, and I'm telling you, bad words in our house were shut up. No, couldn't say shut up. And hate is a word that we don't really use in my home. We don't use it. That's just too strong of a word. So you choose other words instead. It's important.
It is. Choose your words wisely.
Any other questions, Stephen?
No, we have lots of comments, though, and lots of live comments. We might be having some internet issues right now, too. So,
some internet issues?
Yeah. I think something
Oh, gosh. We were almost out of time, aren't we?
Are we?
We're about there. It's 6.
Oh, man, this went so fast. I know that there were some other questions from that, but we'll have to, I guess we're going to have to do this again.
Yeah.
We're just going to have to.
No. Yes! Oh, Barbara, your voice is just something.
It's very appropriate for Halloween.
Yes.
It's like,
You sound like a little gremlin or something because of your internet, of course.
Internet, yeah.
Probably because of maybe. My energy is different on days when I have a thing all day. Wait till this. That was really exciting.
That's cool.
it is cool. It's like, how does she do that?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so let's call it a wrap.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, ladies. What an amazing show. We had a great audience and lots of great questions and comments, so definitely visit the post there. Thank you so much, and let's revisit this. There was a comment that said, why want you guys to keep on going, or something like that? Like, why does this have to be the last one? So think about it. And thank you, live audience. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for participating and watching and commenting. We appreciate that, and also hitting that love button. During the show, that's always nice too. We're wrapping up with episode 4 of Reiki Topics and Techniques, and we'll be back soon with more programming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Stay there 1 second, ladies. Okay.